And I think that we are ready to start. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you very much for joining us. Welcome to this session of the Gender Learning Program. There is an interpretation. The interpretation is available. So please make sure that you can use it to Spanish and to English. And this event is being recorded. My name is Sandra Andraca, and I will be the co-facilitator of this session together with my colleague Patricia Krinjanson. She's the Senior Gender Agricultural System and Forest Landscape Specialist of the World Bank, and we'll be together for the next 90 minutes in this session that has been co-designed by my colleagues Agustela, Nini Pavli. Estela is a gender specialist of the Food and Agriculture Commodity Systems, and Ishita Kaushik of the World Bank. And we are together here also with the support of my colleague Alexandra Atala. This is the module 2 of the course 2 of Gender Integrated Landscape Management and Restoration Initiatives. In this case, we are focusing on the gender equality gaps and gender responsive approaches to conservation and restoration of natural habitats. The first module was focused on integrated landscape management. This course is jointly organized by the Food and Agricultural Commodity System as community and the World Bank Food System Land Use and Restoration Impact Program, FOLUR. And if you haven't done it already, please introduce yourself on the chat box and your organization. Where are you based? And I'm going to share with you the agenda for today. And I think you can see now, right? So we are now in the welcome and opening. Then Patty is going to recap about the module 1. Some of you attended this module. She's going to share this initiative of the World Bank, a learning initiative on integrated land use. And we will have some questions for you and to know a little bit about the audience. And then we go to a panel where Patty will do an introduction of the topic. And we have 3 main presentations, one for Amanda Bradley, FAO, Juliana Gil from Costa Rica, and Nelson Yala of the FOLUR country office in Liberia, and Hava Dugbe, or the Society of Conservation in Liberia. Then we will have time for the breakout groups. There will be one group for Spanish speakers, and then we come back to the plenary and we wrap up. And without further delay, Patty, the floor is all yours.
Great. Thank you, Sandra. Can we have the slide up then? Wow, this is great, you guys. I'm so excited to see so many different people from different places, different experiences. It's been really nice in these sessions to bring together the different viewpoints because people have very different experiences to share, and we're trying to pull the story together, if you will. FOLUR is quite a unique program in the sense that we cover 27 countries and 8 different commodity value chains. And so we have an opportunity to pull together many lessons and stories. And the partnership we have with FAO and the World Bank and UNDP and UNEP and WRI, and the list goes on. CGIAR, we're trying to pull together the good work that's been done on gender, and in this case, for this course, restoration. Next slide, please. So I'm going to give you a very quick recap of our last session, which was it focused on integrated landscape and land use management. We had a great speaker from UNDP, Andrea Aguilar, who really talked to us about why we need to consider gender equality in integrated land use and also restoration projects. What are the gender equalities, the different roles, experience, rights, barriers, etc. So this is recorded, and I encourage you to take a look at the earlier session. I also talked a little bit about some FOLUR country project examples, and we started looking at this concept of getting beyond just reaching diverse people, women, youths, etc., but thinking about how our projects and programs benefit them, and even further than that, empower and transform the systems that they're in. We are going to continue to pull together project experiences from the ground. And in the first session, we heard from Edith in Honduras, talking about strengthening women's coffee groups and linking directly to buyers, which was very interesting. Juliana from UNDP talked about a Costa Rica, Panama example that was empowering women's production units and biofactories that were led by women. And Ivy from Ghana talked about community resource management groups in Ghana that are doing some very wonderful things on empowering women and youth. So that was module 1. So now we're going to, next slide, think a little bit more about restoration per se. Before I get to that though, sorry. The World Bank has put together a very nice integrated land use e-learning initiative. It's very easy to do. You just go on and go through the different modules. It's quite quick. And next slide takes you through basically a concept or conceptual framework that thinks about integrated land use initiatives and 8 components that are quite important for integrated landscape or land use management initiatives. And these are thinking about multi-stakeholder engagement. And here we would certainly say inclusive. Thinking about both the environmental focus, but also the economic aspects. The boundaries, and this comes to the whole idea that we are shifting to landscapes. What are the boundaries of the landscape that you're working within? Land tenure issues always loom large, particularly with the gender lens. Financial strategies are increasingly being brought up to the fore for us to think about. The monitoring, evaluation, and learning, and we're going to be talking a little later about indicators and in the monitoring scheme of things. And then the cross-sectoral coordination. Again, bringing agriculture, environment, land, water together looms large. And I would say these 8 areas, if you will, are just equally important when we zoom in a little bit more on restoration activities per se, and we'll come back to that. Next slide. So the learning initiative was broken into 2 parts that are actually now all available. So next slide will show you where they are available. So I encourage you to check that out. Okay, so next slide. I think, or are we going to the Zoom? Yeah, let's take a break here and think about asking you a few questions. Okay, we would like to know something about the audience. So if we could launch the Zoom poll, that would be great, Alexandra. Okay, so first question. Where is the main geographic focus of your work? If you could. It's a tough question sometimes, but it's always interesting to see. I think with our timing, we have very much trouble getting to South Asia and Southeast Asia. And I think in the next year, we will be doing regional meetings more and more. Okay, so a lot global. Latin America and Africa is our focus audience so far. Okay, thank you. Next question. I think the next question is, are you working with a project? Can we get the second question up? Maybe I'm going too fast. Okay, can we get the second question or?
I'm not sure, Alexandra, is something. Yeah, sorry, thank you.
There we go. Okay, second question. Sorry for the delay. Are you working with a project team implementing restoration activities? And I deliberately worded it like this because you might not be on the ground per se, but you might be working as part of a team from different parts. But we're kind of curious how many people are really involved with actually implementing restoration activities, which we haven't even defined yet. But okay, so many of you are, 71%. That's wonderful. Okay, that's good because we want to learn from you guys. Be interested to see what you think of some of the materials and lessons we're sharing today. All right, one more question. Can we go to the third one? Is this your first exposure to thinking about forest and landscape restoration with a gender lens? Okay. Okay, so we've got one third, 2/3 kind of breakdown. Okay, so 2/3 of you have been thinking about this at some level, and 1/3 of you, you're just beginning the journey. Welcome. Okay, let's talk about then what are we talking about in terms of forest landscape restoration? So broadly speaking, forest landscape restoration can be defined as planned processes that aim to regain the ecological integrity, as well as enhancing well-being of people in deforested and degraded landscapes. But we know that power imbalances, often limit women's, and not just women, but other people that have traditionally been less empowered, Indigenous people, youths, people with disabilities, etc. We know that these power imbalances often limit their participation in, not to mention benefits from, forest landscape restoration processes and actions. Can we get rid of the poll? Or I just got rid of it. Okay. Now, in this context, the decisions include things like what species to introduce into a degraded landscape, what areas to prioritize for restoration. So these decisions, have to be made, including participatory processes that are very inclusive to address the different needs of the different community members. Because we know they rely on different tree species, varieties, for example, and they also have different skills and knowledge to share and use. Next slide, please. Oh yeah, and I wanted to mention that I'm pulling from here, this is the work from the International Agricultural Research System, CGIAR. They've done some wonderful work on landscape restoration and gender. So, and in fact, they have an e-learning course that is specifically on gender and inclusion in forest landscape initiatives or restoration specifically. So I put that down at the bottom. I encourage you to look at that because, when I started looking at this, I said, we know that there's a lot of different types of restoration and forest landscape interventions. What are they? And in the CGIAR Forest, Trees, and Agriculture program, they focused on 7 types of interventions. They could be around natural regeneration, and specifically farmer-managed natural regeneration. There's a lot of this work going on in the Sahel, for example. It can be about planted forests, woodlots, tree plantations. It could be about mangrove restoration. It could be about silviculture, which is basically the art and science of managing forests and woodlands for different purposes and values. It could be around improved fallow approaches or agroforestry. And we know agroforestry is a very diverse range of types of trees and bushes that are planted on farms for many different purposes. It could also be about watershed protection and erosion control. So in the FOLUR program, we have a challenge because across these 27 country projects, we have different kinds of restoration activities going on. So it's hard to zoom in on one type. Yeah, next slide, please. So what is gender responsive forest landscape restoration? Basically, it boils down to being ensuring that women and men at all levels have equal voice and influence in the strategic decisions related to forest landscape restoration, and that this contributes to substantive equality and outcomes for women and men. So again, the good work by C4 and others emphasizes it's not just about the participation and increasing women's workload, for example. It's about the outcomes, okay, and the equality and outcomes. Next slide, please. And I just wanted to point out that there's distinct risks related to ignoring gender issues in projects that are doing restoration. And this, in a nutshell, women often provide the labor for restoration initiatives. So these projects can actually increase their workload without proper compensation. The phenomena that's widespread across the world of increased responsibilities without increased rights to benefit from those. So it's something to be very conscious about. And the fact that if this is happening, there's going to be very limited sustainability and long-term effectiveness of the restoration activities. All right, next slide. I think we're coming. So we've been thinking in this series of webinars, if you will, about then the reach, benefit, empower framework. And in fact, our speakers that are following me will be speaking more about this. And I tried to pull together some specific types of forest landscape restoration activities in the reach, benefit, and empower category. So on the reach side, you can do things like awareness campaigns on women's forest rights. On the project benefits, we can have gender-specific FLR management trainings, for example. The inclusive participatory community planning dialogues are often held, and ensuring that people are being included. But does this mean they're actually going to benefit, or is this empowering them? And we have to keep asking that question. So we want to be thinking more about results-based payments directly to women for the activities that they're doing. We want to think about things like dedicated funds for forest-related activities or restoration-related activities. And credit always looms large. So thinking about very targeted programs to women that are leading forest and agroforestry related enterprises, for example. And going even beyond that, we want to think about much more leadership training and making sure that women are in the leadership roles and empowered. So in the associations and groups that are working on these efforts, we want to see much more of leadership and control of decision making. And we want to see much more dedicated funds, okay, going to, for example, communication efforts that really target getting the information to women and the best practices, the technical trainings to women, for example. So I point to a brief here called Gender and Forest Landscape Projects, Actions and Indicators. It's a short brief that I did with a monitoring and evaluation expert, Anders Jensen at the World Bank. So check that out. We've got more examples in there. Okay, next slide. Hope I'm staying on time. So going forward, what we'd like to do in this series of courses and into next year is we want to really begin seriously documenting what are the gender responsive forest landscape restoration activities underway in FOLUR, but not just in FOLUR projects. Some of your projects also that are not FOLUR. We would like to be better advising project teams on appropriate indicators for monitoring and reporting on the results of such activities. And our next speaker, Amanda from FAO, will be talking a little bit about this, so that's great. And we want to widely share this evidence and stories about why and how such actions make a big difference. And our case studies that we're pulling together, our speakers today, Juliana from Costa Rica and Hawa from Liberia, are going to help start weaving in these evidence and stories from people that are working on the ground. Okay, next slide, please. So thank you. Please feel free to reach out with questions, projects, examples, lessons. Please put your questions, observations, anything that you're kind of uncertain about in the chat box. That'll be very helpful. Okay. So I think we'll just keep putting your questions in the chat box right now. And in the interest of time, we're going to go straight to our first speaker, who is Amanda Bradley. Amanda is a specialist on tenure, gender, and Indigenous peoples for RED Plus in the Forestry Division at FAO. And Amanda's going to be talking about monitoring of gender equality and social inclusion in restoration projects. And we're thrilled to have you, Amanda. Thank you so much for being here. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Patty. It's a great pleasure to join you from Rome, Italy. Here I'm a consultant with FAO and specializing in gender. And today I'm going to speak to you about some of basically focusing on a recent publication on the monitoring of gender equality and social inclusion in restoration programs. Just give me a sec. Okay, so the first question I wanted to ask is why is it so important to look at gender equality and social inclusion in forest and landscape restoration programs? And Patty's already touched on this, but I wanted to just summarize basically 5 key issues. The first one is just that it's really important to consider this gender equality and social inclusion from a fundamental kind of human rights perspective. So respect for the international agreements and conventions that many countries have signed, including CEDAW and the UNDP, the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. So just from that really high level perspective. Next is to ensure the diverse access to knowledge bases. So women and men having different, perspectives and information on resources that can be very useful to these programs. The third is to generate stronger buy-in from local stakeholders so that both men and women are fully committed to contribute to these programs. Fourth reason, to provide greater opportunities and possibilities to enhance the well-being of both men and women. So having them both involved, fully involved, means that the results for their well-being are more likely to be positive for both groups. And then lastly, just increasing the long-term sustainability of restoration programs. So by having that greater buy-in, enhanced well-being, that in turn leads to greater sustainability for these projects that are often limited by, donor funds and so forth. So I'm sure there's many more reasons, but I just wanted to highlight these sort of top 5 in my mind anyway. Then I want to next talk about some of the key considerations that you might think about in putting together a monitoring system that will fully integrate this GESI, or gender equality and social inclusion. Excuse the acronym. So first is about having clear objectives that acknowledge gender equality and social inclusion. So from the start, sort of outlining what you want to achieve, whether it be, increased opportunities for women to participate in trainings or to increase their income. So having those objectives clearly defined at the start is very important. Next is to think about the governance structure of the monitoring system and the QA/QC, which is the quality assurance and quality control. So you might think about having a gender expert included in the team that's responsible for monitoring to make sure that these aspects are always sort of on the radar. Then next would be to think about using a combination of qualitative and quantitative methods. Sometimes, people focus a lot on the numbers, how many participants, how many men, how many women, but they maybe forget to think about, some of the nuances and the information that you would get from maybe a focus group discussion or an interview that will help you to improve and adapt to your program and really see the full idea of the results. So that's really key. Next is to involve women in the monitoring itself. So sometimes in a village, women will be more comfortable talking to other women about their experience. So especially at the field level, I think it's really key to have women involved. And sometimes it might mean that extra capacity building is necessary. Also, the importance of having a transparent system that allows you to communicate the results of your data collection, and then using those results to adapt. So thinking about what are the lessons learned and how can you improve the work over time. And then lastly, the importance of sharing lessons learned. So yeah, I can't emphasize enough how important it is to document your work and be able to capture your successes as well as your failures, and to share those in a way, so that the broader community can learn. I wanted to speak a little bit about the indicators for helping to to monitor how restoration programs are addressing gender equality and social inclusion. And this new publication that I'm going to introduce next is, it contains a list of potential indicators that you might consider for your program. There's just a couple of examples here. So, for example, the number of women and men in decision-making related positions in the program, or the existence of related legal frameworks that promote, enforce, and monitor gender equality. So these indicators are laid out, and they're sort of categorized according to that framework that Patty mentioned earlier, this reach, benefit, empower, and transform. And so the idea being that you could try to not only reach women, but also take that next step and really benefit and empower them. So yeah, this short publication just came out a couple of weeks ago from FAO. It's very short and practical. It's only about 10 pages, and it gives as I said, the guidance on how to set up the systems, and some guidance on indicators with quite a number of examples. It originated from some work that we did in Kenya at the national level, where we were working with the technical working group managing the restoration program in Kenya, and they were looking to set up some indicators that they could kind of use across the country to report back on their restoration work and achievements, and also recognize gender equality and social inclusion in that work. And this was generously funded by UK PACT. So yeah, just the final message I wanted to end with was this: important to measure how the work not only reaches, but also benefits, empower, and transforms the lives of women and other marginalized groups. So that is the end. Yeah, just I am hoping that we will have the Spanish and French version of this document. It should have been today, actually, but I think by the end of the week. So if we are sharing the presentations, I hope you will see those additional links later on. Yeah, so thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Amanda. You know, so in working with project teams, I often hear the question, or people will say, absolutely, this is what we want to do. We're in complete agreement. But what can we do? We're doing forest landscape restoration. It's often with technical teams focusing on technical activities. So what can we do in the area of gender? And so I think that these kinds of guidance documents that give specific indicators, if you look at the indicator, it actually tells you the kind of activity and action, that you need to. So they are directly linked. So they help answer the question: what are gender transformative activities or actions you can do in these types of projects, and then how will you measure them? So it's a two-way link, and so if you can get those really specific good indicators and share them, it gives people really good ideas and very solid practical ideas. So I would very much encourage people to check out that publication. And please keep putting your questions into the meeting chat, okay? And we are going to come back and we're going to have some time for them. So I think we're on time, and we will go on to the next speaker. We're going to hear a case study from Costa Rica on women in restoration. And our speaker is Juliana Gil. She's a Gender and Stakeholder Officer at UNDP. So welcome, Juliana, and I'll turn it over to you now. She's there.
Sí, muy buenos días. Muchas gracias. ¿Me escuchan bien? Bueno, muchísimas gracias y mucho gusto de nuevo compartir este espacio con cada una de ustedes para continuar contando sobre nuestras acciones en género. Quizás retomar, como les contaba el otro día, el proyecto
Juliana,
Conectando
Juliana.
Comunidades. Ajá.
Perdón, no sé si puedes ajustar un poco el micrófono, que se oye un poquito de
Ok,
sonido.
ok. ¿Ahora está mejor?
Sí, gracias.
Ok. Bueno, tal vez entonces, como les contaba el otro día, el proyecto Conectando Comunidades y Ecosistemas trabaja en el componente 2 con proyectos piloto demostrativos. Y hoy quiero contarles un poco sobre el piloto de restauración que nosotras hemos denominado Mujeres Restauradoras. Contarles inicialmente que la cuenca binacional del río Zixaola, compartida por Costa Rica y Panamá, es una zona altamente conservada y especialmente en la zona alta y media de la cuenca. Pero uno de los principales problemas que se ha identificado recientemente es la deforestación, especialmente en la cuenca baja. Y este fenómeno está muy relacionado con los medios de vida que los pobladores buscan para elementos socioeconómicos. Por ello, una de las preocupaciones principales de los grupos con los que trabajamos, grupos asociativos de mujeres, tiene que ver con la reforestación, aunque el proyecto entiende la restauración como un modelo mucho más amplio. Tal vez continuar. Gracias. Adelante, la siguiente. Ok, bueno, como les contaba el otro día, nosotros realizamos un estudio de línea base y estos son algunos de los datos en donde podemos darnos cuenta que para muchas mujeres con las que trabajamos, sus organizaciones tienen objetivos alineados a la conservación, al rescate y el resguardo cultural y el ambiente. Y es por esta razón que muchas organizaciones de mujeres tienen emprendimientos ecoturísticos. ¿Y por qué les cuento esto? Primero porque teniendo en cuenta estas particularidades, el proyecto ha tomado la decisión de apoyar unidades de paisaje que, entre otras características, sean procesos asociativos de mujeres para potenciar su trabajo, que aunque no son todos de mujeres únicamente, pero son liderados por mujeres y tienen beneficios para sus familias, para hombres y mujeres de la comunidad. Esto porque la asociatividad en la zona es muy importante. Segundo, decidimos diversificar las técnicas de gestión del suelo para que sean más funcionales a los emprendimientos ecoturísticos. Tenemos entonces viveros culturales, plantas que atraen visitadores florales, las tradicionales cercas vivas, forestería análoga, bueno, entre otros. Ya les voy a contar un poquito más. Adelante. Estos son algunos datos sobre las hectáreas de restauración diferenciadas por sexo. Siempre nos parece importante mantener la medición del avance de manera desagregada. Como ustedes pueden ver, aunque las mujeres participan más en cantidad, digamos en números, cuantitativamente, tienen menos hectáreas porque tienen menos acceso a la tierra. Y este puede notarse en el número de unidades de paisaje versus, por ejemplo, en el promedio de hectáreas por unidades de paisaje desagregadas por sexo. Adelante. También, como pueden ver en esta diapositiva, en las jornadas ambientales que realizamos, las mujeres participan abrumadoramente, ¿verdad? Se participan en gran cantidad. Y las jornadas ambientales para nosotros son espacios de organización comunitaria para contribuir a la reforestación en su mayoría. La comunidad se organiza, se reúne 1 o 2 días a la semana o al mes y genera procesos compartidos de reforestación. Adelante. A partir, y aquí entro un poquito más en materia, a partir de las brechas que hemos identificado en términos de género, hemos ido tomando decisiones, ¿verdad? Entonces, hemos fortalecido capacidades teniendo en cuenta las temáticas de interés de las mujeres. En este caso, al inicio del proyecto consultamos sobre los temas que ellas consideraban importantes de trabajar y fuimos desarrollando metodológicamente esos temas que además eran funcionales a sus procesos de conservación, reforestación y ecoturismo. Realizamos también talleres para crear planes comunales de restauración ecológica y esto es una herramienta muy interesante porque en estos espacios las personas pudieron entender un poco mejor a qué nos referíamos con restauración ecológica y cómo podíamos crear planes comunitarios pensando no en el proyecto o en el apoyo del proyecto, sino como un proceso comunitario para las organizaciones que les permitiera incluso priorizar sitios, escoger los tipos de semilla, los tipos de especie que querían reproducir, tener objetivos de restauración a largo plazo, bueno, entre otras cosas. Y en el marco de estas acciones realizamos intercambios para conocer otras iniciativas o que entre ellas se conocieran y otros viveros que existían en la cuenca. Y esto es importante porque la cuenca es muy grande y no todas las iniciativas se conocen entre sí ni comparten información. Entonces, estos espacios de intercambio nos han ayudado a conectar a las organizaciones y que entre ellas puedan compartir buenas prácticas. Adelante. Algunas de las herramientas de gestión de paisaje y del suelo, si puedes darle un clic más, por favor. Gracias. Algunas de las herramientas más concretas que hemos aplicado han sido también, como les conté el otro día, en producción sostenible, recuperación de prácticas ancestrales, de nuevo, buen uso y conservación de semillas de alto valor cultural, pero que también les funcionen a ellas para suplir necesidades socioeconómicas, que es un tema muy importante en la zona, pues su economía es de sobrevivencia, altamente de sobrevivencia. Y como pueden ver ustedes aquí en esta imagen, hay un árbol de suita. La suita es usada entre los pueblos indígenas y cabécares para construir sus casas y los kioscos donde se reúnen, donde comparten y donde realizan ceremonias. Estas semillas deben ser muy cuidadas porque las personas indígenas manifiestan que no todas las semillas que se siembran crecen y no todas las que crecen permanecen, ¿verdad? Entonces es un recurso muy escaso pero de alto valor cultural y hemos avanzado con ellas en procesos de reforestación en ese sentido. Dentro de las prácticas también que hemos realizado, hemos acudido a un sistema de mano de vuelta, que es un sistema tradicional de trabajo mancomunado en unidades de paisajes diferentes a las de cada persona. Aquí tuvimos la experiencia de que uno de los intercambios que anteriormente les contaba dejó como consideración que las mujeres de las organizaciones necesitaban una ayuda para poder rehabilitar su vivero y luego de eso las mujeres mismas propusieron generar jornadas ambientales en esos viveros para que todas las organizaciones se movilizaran hasta esos lugares para ayudar a reconstruir esos viveros que necesitaban una ayuda. Entonces es un trabajo mancomunado que se hace en ciertos lugares donde se requiere y luego volvemos a otros lugares para generar un mayor apoyo. Entonces hicimos lo mismo en otras comunidades para ayudar a habilitar el vivero, a sembrar suita, etcétera. Y yo creo que esta es de las experiencias más valiosas o más enriquecedoras, pues se manifiesta muy abiertamente la solidaridad entre los grupos y a la vez el proyecto atiende los intereses de las personas. También tenemos viveros que son administrados y gestionados por mujeres. Y aquí muy particularmente contarles que en nuestro sistema de articulación en la cuenca, estos viveros abastecen los procesos de restauración con los que trabajamos, es decir, producen plántulas para las jornadas ambientales y para la reforestación en otros sitios o en otros lugares. Y con esto también logramos un mayor intercambio y una mayor conectividad en la cuenca y también contribuimos a la economía de estos lugares. Adelante. Bueno, como el tiempo es un poco corto, yo quisiera tal vez comentar muy rápidamente sobre una iniciativa reciente, pero a la cual queremos brindarle mucha atención y sostenibilidad. Estamos levantando actualmente una brigada de mujeres que realizan biomonitoreo de ríos. La brigada está compuesta por mujeres que representan las organizaciones con las que trabajamos en restauración. Para realizar el biomonitoreo de ríos contamos con una metodología diseñada por ANAI, una organización local de más de 30 años en la zona, que se preocupa por la integración de la comunidad en la ciencia. Básicamente el biomonitoreo de ríos o la metodología de biomonitoreo de ríos que están aprendiendo las mujeres se basa en una metodología comunitaria que nos permite a partir de peces y macroinvertebrados medir la salud del río, y para el caso de restauración se adapta para indicadores biológicos que ayudan a medir la deforestación o la presencia y cobertura forestal según las familias de peces o de especies encontradas en la zona. Esta es una iniciativa que consideramos muy innovadora y funciona tanto para fortalecer procesos organizativos con las mujeres y obviamente sus capacidades. También le da un plus a los emprendimientos turísticos porque se pueden ubicar como actividades habituales, hay una guía de peces, hay una publicación de los peces que se ubican en cada una de estas organizaciones, y eso potencia también sus oportunidades en los emprendimientos turísticos, y nos permite también contribuir a la conservación de la biodiversidad. Entonces, es una iniciativa que estamos iniciando con este grupo de mujeres restauradoras y que nos parece muy valiosa para darle sostenibilidad al proceso, que es lo necesario, buscar que los procesos tengan sostenibilidad. Y bueno, yo creo que queda una más. Sí, bueno, eso es todo. Muchísimas gracias por su atención.
Wonderful.
Y espero que nuestro trabajo pueda inspirarles y contribuir también a las acciones que ustedes realizan. Estoy leyendo, de hecho, que alguien está preguntando si la metodología biomonitoreo está publicada. Les podemos compartir información sobre lo que tenemos actualmente. Muchas gracias.
Wonderful. Juliana, thank you so much. That was incredibly inspiring. I love hearing the specific ideas of things like community restoration days and restoration plans where people are coming together and sharing across borders. In Panama and Costa Rica is incredibly powerful. The management tools you talked about, recovering these ancestral practices that conserved native seeds, and women-owned and managed tree nurseries, and the women's group focusing on women's water and health and restoration of the waterways. That is really powerful and inspiring. So I hope that as we go forward and share this even more widely with the recording, that people will be inspired by your example. So thank you very much. Okay, in the interest of time, again, sorry, we're moving very quickly. I'm going to go on to our last country case study. So we're jumping over to Africa now. And we are privileged to have Hawa Dugbe, the Gender and Safeguard Officer for the Society for Conservation of Nature of Liberia, and her colleague Nelson Jala, who's the FOLUR project manager for the Liberia case. And I think it's Hawa that's going to speak if she's there. Otherwise, I'll ask Nelson to. It's on improving gender agency in restoration activities of the FOLUR project in Liberia. So I'll turn it over to Hawa. Are you there?
Yes.
There you are.
Hello.
Okay. The name says Nelson, but it's you, Hawa. Thank you. Welcome. And go ahead.
Thank you. Yes. How you doing? How's everyone?
Good, we can hear you. Can we get your presentation?
Yeah,
There it is. There it's coming. Great.
okay.
Go ahead.
So,
Thanks.
okay, on behalf of the FOLUR Liberia team, I'm presenting and I'm the General Safeguards Officer, like you already said, on the FOLUR project. And I work with NCNL. Okay, next slide. Okay, on the overview of our projects and our objectives is to promote biodiversity conservation and sustainable food systems for the enhancement of livelihood opportunities in Northwest Liberia landscape. And then the Liberia FOLUR project is working on 4 components. And the project components will develop lands use planning for the national and Northwest Liberia landscape, where we promote sustainable production practices for food crops, palm oil, cocoa, supported by the responsible value chain. And we also do biodiversity loss reduction and restoration of natural habitats. And we coordinate, collaborate, and monitor, and also evaluate. And our project direct beneficiaries have 50,000 people, where we have 25,500 men and 24,500 women who are expected to benefit from this FOLUR project. And we have our co-financiers, where we have the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. We have the Ministry of Agriculture, the FDA, LAGIST, Liberia Land Authority, CI Liberia, Fauna and Flora International, Royal Society for the Protection of Birds, and that of SCNL, IDH, and Minor Palm Oil International. So we have our project duration, that is 60 months, 5 years, and it's running from May 2022 to April 2027. Next slide, please. So our restoration activities, the Liberia FOLUR project will continue to contribute to maintaining global biodiversity and ecosystem goods and services by improving land use practices of 315,000 hectares of land, as you can see below, where we have 100,000 hectares of land under improved management to benefit biodiversity. And also we have 200,000 hectares of land under sustainable land management in promoting system production. And also we have the 15,000 hectares of land to conserve valley forest lost and avoided. And we say, what are some of the activities to be used? We say restricting agricultural activities to designated areas and avoiding encroaching on habitats. And we designate high conservation valley forest area for monitoring as well. And we also use the restoration opportunities to assess methodology in mitigating and also sign conservation agreements with the 10 clients after the land use plan was developed. Next slide, please. And then we come to our general activities. At the beginning of the project so far and onward, we have conducted a baseline study to map and define the potential role of marginalized group and the youth group in a project landscape. We have also socialized the project with 1,062 men and 543 women. A total number of 1,073 men and 543 women have been participating in the project so far. A total of 313 men and 79 women have received direct benefits to the project. So the project has worked with 75 males and 45 females locally, gathering cultural and religious leaders to explain the importance of women participation on the FOLUR project. A total of 37 men and 12 women have included the Northwest Liberia landscape governance structure. We have developed the participatory land use planning for the Northwest Liberia landscape as well, where 39 sacred sites were identified in the Northwest Liberia landscape, where the team went in the field and we did this together. And then the Northwest Liberia landscape was a stakeholder platform was also established with the oil palm and cocoa value chain. We have conducted a series of GBV change agent training, and we have trained over 22 women, 12 men on the project and in the project landscape. Next slide, please. So some of our challenges for now is that we have difficulties in acquiring land for female farmers due to cultural norms. And we have low participation of women in the project activities, like you can see in the overall report on the many women that have participated on the project so far. The women are very low in terms of participation. And some of the challenges because of cultural norms, traditional practices, religion, limited knowledge of restoration and sustainable protection, and also lack of inclusive participatory planning and management on land use landscaping. Next slide. Okay, so our strategies. The FOLUR project will ensure that the following strategies are implemented. Since Nelson is here with me, I'm going to turn over to him so that he can make an input on this so that we can proceed. Nelson, are you there?
Thank you very much, Hawa, and you have said it all. Hawa gave an overview of the FOLUR project, and she spoke of what the project is doing, and also spoke of some of the things talking about as it relates to the issue of the conservation agreement. So I know that we talked about mainstreaming or integrating gender into the FOLUR project. One of the things as it relates to the issue of the conservation agreement that is very cardinal to the implementation of the FOLUR project is that after the development of the land use planning in those 10 clans, the next stage comes in, who talks about the action and the benefit, because there will be restriction to some agricultural side, there will be restriction for smallholder farmer carrying on their farming activity. So we have to come up with alternative source for them. So the alternative source, it will be the sign of the conservation agreement with them. What are the strategies that we are working on to ensure that we implement into the FOLUR project? One of the strategies we talk about is having to do with ensuring equitable decision-making for men and women in restoration activities. One of the reasons why this is important, restoration activity is a whole big ball game that talk about participatory process and integration process. So one of the things is that we need to ensure that men and women have equal say as it relates to what method to use. Like if you look at the FOLUR project that was developed for behavioral aspect, we talk about the wrong method. So the wrong method is the one to be used, but there are a whole lot of methods that can be used. The local community or the local leaders have their own method. They can talk about maybe the community-based approach method, where they look at what specific crops or seeds that can be used for restoration. They can also look at the issue of the wrong method, but also that's one of the things that we are looking at as a strategy, and also looking at conducting general analysis. The general analysis in the restoration is very important because we want to know what is the total number of male or female participation into the restoration process. And the restoration process, the Hawa spoke of 315,000 hectares of degraded land, 200,000 hectares of those land is on a sustainable production. So the sustainable production is a very key area to look at. So what is it important for us to conduct the general analysis? Because there will be what we term as smallholder farmer engaging into do their farming activity. So maybe the women group will say that we are interested in carrying on this, planting these crops, and the male will say we are interested in doing this for our sustainable production. So it is good to conduct a general analysis in any restoration activity if you want the restoration to be successful. The next thing is to improve land and resource rights. It was predicated upon that the Liberal government developed what called the Land Rent Law and the Land Rent Act. So we need to ensure that it is how you call it, that the awareness of the Land Rent Act or the Land Rent Law should be used. Talking about what are customary land, what are public land, what are private land, what are traditional land. We need to look at all of these things. And we should also partner with women in planning restoration activity. So before we plan any activity, we need to ensure that women are involved into the process. How I spoke of it. The landscape we work in, the landscape is how you call it, a guide, what we term as gender, a lot of cultural issues, religious issues, traditional issues. So we need to ensure that women participate into the process, and we should actively involve all of the stakeholders that are involved into the restoration activity on the project, because their ideas are very, very important into restoration activity. And another thing we should look at is to collect the sex disaggregated data on the restoration activity, and we should facilitate dialogue, because dialogue is very important. The dialogue will have access, the control, and the most important thing is the grievance redress mechanism. If the issue of the dialogue is not how you call it, a help into restoration activity, you will think that you have done the restoration, and you will think that you have frontline conservationists on site, but when you leave from there, the people will go back to where you're trying to restore or you have restored. And we should support the visibility of women roles and participation, representation in project activity. It was predicated upon that today you see that women play active role in the multi-stakeholder platform. And that active role that they are playing into it, that the number of participation have improved or increased, and they take on leadership role where women can be the cheerleader for the platform. So these are some of the strategies we are looking around. And we also look at the inclusive participatory planning and management process, because we're talking about the pillar. The pillar talk about the participatory processes. So you can be doing land use planning, and the land use planning is not participatory, it's not integrative. Participatory processes, everybody are important into the process. What are the women, the men, or people living with disability, the youth, the adults, they are all involved into the process. Next slide. So these are just some of the pictures or some of the activity, the platform meeting, the GBV training meeting, cultural heritage meetings. So these are just some of our engagement we have been doing on the project. So how I have discussed almost everything. So predicated upon this, I want to say thank you very much for having us on this meeting.
Thank you, Nelson and
Thank you,
Hawa.
Nelson.
That was
Yeah,
great.
thank you.
Again, we really appreciate the very concrete examples and actions that you are taking, because I suspect for many people, the challenges are familiar that you outlined, Hawa, and people will say we are facing many of the same challenges in many locations. So with no further ado, we are going to go to some discussion groups. We want to hear a little bit more in depth from you about the challenges you are facing in relation to restoration and gender, and some of the approaches that you think are very effective. And we thought if we break it into a couple of groups, it would be easier to talk to each other a little bit more for the next 20 minutes. And will be a Spanish speaking group led by Sandra. So if this, I hope that's going to work. What do you think, Alexandra? Are we going to be able to break into these groups?
We only have one person for the Spanish group. I don't know if anyone else wants to join. If you do, please put in the chat box. Yeah, we have also Juliana Rios.
Okay.
And
Gabriela.
Gabriela.
Great. And then the other groups can just be randomly.
Patty, sorry to interrupt. Before dividing ourselves into groups, can we briefly give the speakers the opportunity to answer a few questions? There were a couple of questions for Amanda.
Well, we can either do that or we can do the discussion groups.
Okay.
That's all the time we have. So
Maybe Amanda, then you can answer in written. It would be useful. To the
Yeah,
chat.
sure. I'll be happy to answer in writing.
Okay.
thank you. Yeah, there's some good questions there.
And more people are joining the Spanish group. Alexandra will send you the consolidated list in a moment.
Okay. So we will soon be split and have a discussion again. What are the greatest gender-related challenges you perceive from your perspective, and what approaches you think are working or could work? And then also, how can we help with further resources, trainings, etc.?
And Patty, I think that we will have around 10 minutes, 15 minutes for the group.
15 minutes for the
15.
Okay, well, even 15 minutes, we can try to get some ideas out. It's always a risk going into the groups because it takes a little time, but I really think sometimes you get some nice ideas out of smaller groups. So hang in there for us.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. So, well, thank you all for that. That was really interesting, actually, to have a little bit of a small group discussion. Do anyone of you have an observation? Did you learn something in that breakout group? Did you get some new ideas? Anyone want to share a good idea they heard, hadn't thought of before? Put up your hand. Just unmute.
Yeah, we have 1 minute or two. If someone wants to share in my group, it was very interesting conversation.
Well, we are taking notes in our groups, and we will continue to share the ideas and examples we hear, and we will be moving forward on more courses like this, more webinars, if you will. I think bringing the examples together, the specific things people are doing is very powerful. And I know FAO and others are working on this, so we want to continue to work together and not have too many disjunct activities going on. Let's help each other. And that's the power of a good partnership like FOLUR has with many different agencies, and we're happy to bring more in. So please, Sandra, I had a question in our group of how we join the gender working group in FACS. And so if you could help with that, and I'll turn it over to you, I think, to sum up. But again, thank you all so much, and to our speakers for inspiring us. Really greatly appreciated.
Yeah, thank you very much. And yes, if you have time, please, Alexandra is going to share the survey of this event, and it will be also sent by email. Thank you very much for joining us today. Also, we invite you, as Patty was saying, to join the FACS community and also the gender working group. You can find the link in the chat. And yeah, there will be a course 3 at the beginning of the year in Q3 about gender and sustainable food and agricultural systems with a focus on value chains. And thank you very much for the interpreters that they are always so helpful. Yeah, Veronica and Meili. And yes.
And Sandra, future ones, we're going to work on getting French translation also, okay? I think we're getting more and more African colleagues in, and it'll be important to have the French translation also.
Sure, and all the suggestions that you have, please don't hesitate to reach us, either Patty or myself, with ideas for events, and we will try also to have next year different time zones. And thank you very much again. Thanks to the speakers also.
Right. Thank you. We stuck to time, didn't we?
Yeah, we did it, and we will respond to questions. There were some questions for Amanda and for Nelson, so we will respond by email. Thank you.
We'll try to respond. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a nice day.